Are you a fan of Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive? If not, are you a fan of exploring and supporting new tabletop role-playing game systems? Or maybe you just like listening to YouTube reviews of things, or you need some nice fantasy-themed ASMR. Well, if any of those things are true for you, then you are really going to want to watch today's video. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, every week I typically do character builds for my favorite role-playing games, but today we're gonna break from the norm and do an in-depth, deep dive review of the Cosmere RPG that just came out a week ago at the time of me recording this video anyways, by Brotherwise Games. So, in case you hadn't heard of the Cosmere RPG, I mean, at the moment, it's only the fourth most successful Kickstarter of all time, raising over $15 million. It's developed by Brotherwise Games, but with lots of input and consulting from Brandon Sanderson himself, yes, the author of the Stormlight Archive and all other Cosmere novels, right? And it is finally available for purchase, though at the time of this video release, you can only get the PDF versions of it. Hardcover books are coming out in just a few months. I, as longtime viewers of this channel know, am a huge fan of all things Brandon Sanderson and of, all things role-playing games. So yeah, I am super excited to be doing this video today. One note, though I did reach out to Brotherwise to see if I could get early access to the PDFs, and they graciously supplied me with them. They are not paying me to make this video, they're not sponsoring it, and they don't have any kind of oversight or input on what I'm going to say. Now, 1 year ago, with early access to the sort of beta mode, like still in development version of the Cosmere RPG, I put out a how to play the Cosmere RPG from like a D&D veteran's perspective video. Check it out up there. I think it is important that you do watch that video, maybe just right after you watch this one, or you could even pause here and go watch that and then come back. If you're at all interested in this game, I think that's important because let me tell you what today's video is not going to be doing. It won't be taking a close look into how the game works and how to play it and what the rules for combat are like, etc., etc. That other video, that's exactly what that one does. And here's the cool thing, as far as I've been able to tell, the mechanics of the game have changed very little in the last year. I like that. I think it shows just how much time and energy they put into playtesting and tweaking and fine-tuning it before they even sent me that like beta mode version last year. So yes, if you want to know how the game works, how to play it, please go watch that video. As for the mechanics of it, I will kind of just make maybe right here a general summation of my feelings. I like it. Okay, moving on. No, I mean, it's crunchy. Crunchier probably a little bit than D&D 5e, but maybe not quite as crunchy or rules heavy as Pathfinder 2e. I'd maybe put it sort of in between those two, I think. And as someone who enjoys a fair bit of crunch in his serial and in his RPGs, I'm a fan. And when I say crunchy, I mean like kind of rules heavy, right? So if you're looking for like a rules light kind of game system, this is probably not for you. And I mean, come on, is that really that surprising for a Sanderson world-based game? The guy who's famous for like intricate and pretty, crunchy magic systems, right? I think this feels right for this world and this game. Okay, so what I do want to do then is spend some time here today talking about 3 of the actual 6 books that are now available for purchase as part of this game. And those are Welcome to Roshar, the Stormlight World Guide, and the Stormlight Handbook, with most of my time spent on the handbook. Check the timestamps to just navigate straight to one section or another if that's what you're interested in. I'm not going to spend time today going into the 3 adventures that you can get right now. The First Step, Bridge 9, and Stonewalkers, mostly because I kind of want to play all of those, but I haven't had the chance to yet. Just quickly, I'll say the First Step is really meant to just kind of help you create your like level 1 character. It's an adventure, but sort of teaches you the game and helps you create your character. It's kind of a one-shot and is especially appropriate for TTRPG and Stormlight newbies. The Bridge 9 adventure is maybe a 1 or 2 shot. Also kind of meant to introduce you to the game system and to the world of Roshar, but it's probably a little more appropriate for TTRPG veterans. And then Stonewalkers is a full-blown, like level 1 to 7 or 8 adventure that takes you all over Roshar, and I ain't going near that thing with the 10-foot pole because I sure am planning on playing that as soon as possible. But as for the other 3 books, you ready to jump in? Great, but first, I gotta say, I am so glad that World Anvil is the sponsor for today's video because it is perfect timing considering what the video today is about. So here's a question. GMs, have you ever felt frustrated trying to build, manage, and keep track of your world and your campaign? Players, have you ever felt frustrated trying to keep track of not only your own character, but also all of the people you've met, places you've been, and events that have transpired over the course of your campaign? Well, there is an easy answer to your frustrations, and I really think it's time you gave it a try if you haven't yet. Yes, I'm talking about World Anvil. In case you don't know, World Anvil is basically the best software out there, both for GMs to build their homebrew world or just manage a campaign inside an existing one, right? And for players to interact effortlessly with that world. For you world builders, World Anvil supports over 45 systems, including D&D and Pathfinder, and here's an exciting announcement, they've got plans to incorporate the Cosmere RPG as well. Correction, I just found out that they already have incorporated the Cosmere RPG into their system. The character sheet is ready to go. Once you've got an account, you simply create a new character and choose the Cosmere RPG as the RPG system, edit that character, and click on Choose Your Sheet. Choose the Cosmere RPG from the drop-down selection, and voila! Here's your character sheet all ready for you to fill in. World Anvil makes it incredibly easy to create wiki-style presentations of your world and your writing so that you can keep track of everything you build. They also have a fantastic interactive map builder that you can customize to your heart's delight, and even chronicles that combine timelines with those maps so that you can plot and keep track of what happened where and when in your world, whether before your campaign started or during. And that's actually my favorite part about this system personally, because I am the worst at taking notes during a play session. Presenting information to your players has never been easier. And yeah, World Anvil is for players too, not just GMs. It not only makes it easier than ever to access everything your GM wants you to know about their world and their campaign, but you can even build your character right from within World Anvil's site, regardless of the game system you're using. Keep your character sheet, your backstory, your spellbook, or maybe your radiant powers, right? Your journal entries and session notes all in one place. The same place where all of the info that you need about your GM's world is also located and is just a click away. It's so seamless and it's so efficient. So please, if you haven't yet, do yourself a favor and go check out World Anvil. Sign up for a free account, if nothing else, to see what you might have been missing. When you do, I would appreciate it if you would use this URL right here so that they know I sent you. I'll put a link in the video description as well, of course. And as always, here's the best part. If you decide to purchase a yearly subscription, use the code D4 at checkout and you will save an amazing 51% off your subscription. So huge thanks to World Anvil. I really appreciate your guys' support. I love what you do. All right, let's get back to the review. First up, then, let's talk about the Welcome to Roshar book. This book is generally a great introduction to the world for people unfamiliar with Roshar. It gives a nice overview of the world, the magic system, high storms, stormlight, what the ecosystem and environment are like, including some examples of unique flora and fauna. Spren, right? Well, Nerd Spren actually didn't make the cut. Other Spren are in there. Politics, culture and nationalities, religion, technology, important recent events, and major players of the world, including the Heralds. That said, it is a very rudimentary primer. It's only 27 pages long. It's got lots of pictures. And for that, actually, I will say the primer is great, even for Stormlight Archive veterans. The artwork here is mostly really fantastic. As a huge fan of the series, I'd honestly probably buy all of the books for the artwork alone. Even if I were never going to play the game, that's me. And to be fair, you know, some pieces are better than others. There are a few that have a style that's maybe a bit cartoonish for my taste, but by and large, it's really well done and just gorgeous, with most of the stuff I at least had never seen before. But as for the welcome book, yes, it can serve as a nice sort of reminder if it's been a while since you've read the Stormlight books, or yes, as an intro to the world for newbies. So would I recommend buying this book? Yes, if you are a serious Stormlight and Cosmere mega fan and or collector, or if you're new to the world of the Stormlight Archive and you just want like a 30,000 foot overview of Roshar and the Stormlight Archive setting before jumping in, right? I would not recommend buying this book if you are already familiar with the world and or if you're planning on getting the Stormlight World Guide and reading through it and don't really feel like you also need the 30,000 foot overview. You know who I can recommend to everyone though? My channel members and patrons. Quick shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me, for this channel. Your support is everything to me. I could not do what I do without you, so thank you. If you're not a member or a patron of the channel, I would love it if you would just consider becoming one. There's a button down there that says join. Click on that or go to the Patreon link in the video description and you'll see like what that entails. I give all of my channel perks to anyone who signs up at just like the silver level or higher, which is $2 a month. And those perks include access to the library of write-ups that I do for each of my like character builds for RPGs, access to the community Discord server, and even access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. If you can't or don't want to support the channel in that way, that's fine. Thanks for just being here and watching and liking and subscribing. Those things are also very helpful for me, for the channel. Okay, the Stormlight World Guide, speaking of, by contrast, is a deep dive, a very deep dive into the world of Roshar. If Welcome to Roshar is a 30,000 foot view, the World Guide is a ground level view with a magnifying glass. It's almost 300 pages and is just chock full of in-depth detail that the Welcome book gave like a high level overview of. You could sort of compare this book to like a mix of the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual for D&D, but maybe only the bits of the DMG that talk about like the world and the setting and the pantheon, etc. of Dungeons and Dragons, right? The Stormlight World Guide isn't really a rule book, with maybe the exception of the chapter in there on Shadesmar. But it does give lots of advice for GMs on how to use the various settings, the factions and nationalities, and yes, the enemies in a campaign. And yeah, almost a third of the book is essentially a bestiary, right? Replete with stat blocks, tips on how to use adversaries, and of course, fantastic artwork. So yes, I think the book is mostly a useful tool for GMs, but as a player, I might also want to use this book to help me create my character, create my backstory, right? Figure out where I want them to be from and how that might inform their personality and motivations, understand what factions my character might align themselves with or be opposed to, what they think about important historical and also recent world-shaping events, major players, etc., etc. Finally, again, as just a huge Stormlight fan, this book is an awesome encyclopedia and guide that I can use as a resource if I want to be reminded about or maybe learn more about a particular culture or nation or historical event or faction. It might not be like as comprehensive as the Coppermind online, right? The 17th Shard, but there's stuff in here you won't find online. And again, it is gorgeously illustrated, making the experience so much more enjoyable, in my opinion. One important note about the World Guide, and I think the Stormlight portion of the Cosmere RPG in general, and I say the Stormlight portion because in case you didn't know, yes, the plan is to like involve other worlds in the Cosmere, right? They're already hard at work, I know, on the Mistborn additions to this game, with plans to do more in the future. But for the Stormlight portion here, the sort of general setting is in the time period after Book 3, Oathbringer, but before like Book 4, Rhythm of War, right? You don't have to set your game there necessarily, but that's kind of the assumption that they're going off as they kind of talk about the state of the world in these books. That said, you should know that there are spoilers for the first 5 books kind of throughout these game books, especially in the World Guide and the Handbook. So if that's a concern, you're going to want to read at least through Oathbringer, if not all the way through Wind and Truth, before you delve too far into like the rules and such. Also, there is a bit of new lore in these books, including radiant powers and things described in the game books, and they are very importantly and excitingly canonical, developed in close partnership with Brandon himself, as I've said. Of course, other lore is just hinted at, making these books fun fodder for the conspiracy theorists and prediction mongers of the Cosmere, of which there are so many. Yeah, there's definitely some Raffo stuff going on here too. Some other highlights from this book for me include the patron section, where it talks not only about important organizations and major players from the novels, like Dalinar's Coalition, or the Diagram, or Yasna, or Kaladin, or even Lift, so cool, but how you as a GM might use them in your game and how gaining them as a patron might give actual in-game like mechanical advantages and benefits in your social and exploration phases of your gameplay. The Points of Interest chapter is not only useful to give you a lot of info on places like Alethkar, the Ral Elorim, Urithiru, and more, but I really appreciate how it also gives some great sample and adventure hooks for each of those specific settings to help you create anything from a one-shot to a full-blown campaign that takes place in those various settings. I will say, as a point of minor criticism, I do wish they could have expanded this section a bit, actually. There are currently only 5 points of interest in this section. There are several important sub-locations with each of those, but I would have liked to see more. Give me the Pure Lake, give me Azir, etc. Maybe we might see those in another book someday with additional plot hooks and details on more places. And just to clarify, we do get a really thorough treatment of every major nation in just chapter 2 of the book. It's just chapter 6 that focuses in on a few points of interest to give potential adventure hooks that I've been talking about. I would have loved to see more. Finally, the Adversary and Bestiary section here is a favorite of mine from the book. I love all the art that they've got. The stat block presentation is pretty straightforward. It's pretty well designed, I think. And I appreciate the variety of potential enemies and allies here, from simple bandits and axe hounds to fused and regals of all varieties. Skybreakers of the 2nd up to the 4th ideal. It reminds me kind of young adult and then ancient dragons in D&D getting increasingly more powerful with each additional ideal of a potential foe. There's chasm fiends, there's thunderclasts, including nasty buffs for enemies that are deemed specifically as bosses. They basically get 2 turns every round instead of legendary actions, right? And those considered minions who can't crit and are automatically defeated when they suffer an injury. So, would I recommend buying this book? Yes, if you are a Stormlight diehard, if you're a GM planning on running a Cosmere game, and then really anyone who's only going to buy 2 books from the current version of the Cosmere RPG. I would spend my money on this before any other book from this game aside from the Stormlight Handbook. It's an amazing deep dive into the world. I learned a few things about some characters and nations that I didn't know before reading it. The art is really fun to just gaze at. I can't wait to get my hands on the hard copy of this book. And there's some really useful stuff in here for both players and GMs of the game, especially tips on how to use aspects of Roshar in your character and your campaign. And of course, the Adversary and Bestiary section feels almost indispensable if you don't want to be homebrewing all of your enemies. I strongly recommend that at least one person in your play group own this book. I would not recommend buying this book if you want to play the Cosmere RPG but you can't afford to buy 2 books, or your GM already bought it and they're willing to lend it to you so that you can immerse yourself just a little bit more in the world. But now it is time for the big kahuna here, the Stormlight Handbook itself. If you are going to buy one book from the Cosmere RPG in its current iteration, this is the book you should buy. Now, it's more like the Pathfinder 2e core rulebook than it is the D&D 5e Player's Handbook, in that it basically has all the rules that you need, not only as a player, but really as a GM as well. So yes, there's a light intro for those new to TTRPGs on what a role-playing game is, and then general overview on how to play one, a bit of an overview on Roshar, but even more basic than the Welcome to Roshar book, and then basically everything you need to both build a character and play the game. All the rules, advice on character building, a guide for GMs on how to run a game, everything. It's almost 400 pages long, and even has what I think is the best art of all the books to boot. There are some seriously jaw-droppingly gorgeous pieces in here. I want to get a poster-sized version of some of them and hang them on my wall. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I am not going to go through and break down the rules here and teach you how to play the game. I did that already. I'm going to make sure I link to that video in the video description, because I'm going to be saying go watch that video a lot today, I think. That said, the one thing I hadn't seen much of back when I made that how to play video was detail on the singer ancestry. So right now, when you create your character, you have to choose between having a human ancestry or a singer. Here now we finally get all the detail on what being a singer means. I'm not going to go over every single one of those details, but let me maybe just share a few things about being a singer in this game, because it's pretty dang cool. First up, If you choose to be human, you get 1 extra talent in your heroic path talent tree. Remember, your path is essentially your class, and everyone starts out as one of 6 heroic paths, right? And you could even use that extra talent to like multi-class or multi-path if you wanted to. But talents in your various paths are the features and abilities that you get from that path that make you cool and powerful. Seriously, go watch that How to Play video. It'll explain everything in greater detail. Anyways, humans get to start with 2 talents, right? While singers only get 1, but they also get access to a unique singer talent tree. And they get both the change form talent from that tree, which lets you change form during a high storm if you've found the appropriate spren to do so. And that's something that you should just be able to do with a bit of roleplay and buy-in from your GM, along with then 1 additional bonus talent in that specific singer tree to give you access to a special set of like tier 1 forms. All singers start off with access to dull form and mate form, but those don't do much outside of like roleplay stuff, you cheeky monkeys. You also then can automatically take a talent that gives you forms of finesse, which are art form and nimble form. Art form grants you a +1 to awareness, expertise in painting and music, and advantage on crafting and entertaining tests. True performance bard, that one. And then nimble form, which would be my favorite, of course, just straight up gives you a +1 to your speed, that's kind of like your dexterity, and a +2 to focus. Focus points are like key points for monks, or I guess I should say focus points for monks. And yeah, nimble form seems really good for an agile striker, especially at early game. Maybe my first character will be a singer. Typically you can't get any stat above 3 until you hit level 6. Anyways, you also could choose forms of wisdom instead, and that gives you access to mediation form for a +1 to your presence ability score. That's kind of like your charisma score. And then the ability to aid, take the help action, D&D veterans, without spending focus point to take that aid action. And then you could also get scholar form for a +1 to intellect and a temporary cultural or utility expertise and a cognitive skill rank. I know if you haven't watched that other video, these probably don't make a lot of sense to you, but anyways, they're cool. And then you could get forms of resolve, which give access to the infamous war form, yeah, right at level 1, awesome, which gives you a +1 to strength, a +1 to your deflect stat, so it's built-in armor, naturally, and lets you jump further. Or you could choose work form there for a +1 to willpower, which is kind of like your wisdom, the ability to ignore the exhausted condition, the ability to disguise yourself as a parchman. Hello there, Relaine, I see you. Okay, so yeah, again, if none of that made much sense to you, go watch that How to Play video I did last year, video description. Okay, so yes, when you gain a level, then you always get 1 talent, right? And humans, of course, can put that point into their heroic path or their other heroic path if they've got 2 of them, right? Or their radiant path even, if they have one, right? While singers can do either of those things or choose a talent in their unique singer path to potentially unlock even more and stronger forms. Indeed, even forms of power allowing you to become a regal yourself. Storm form, envoy form, so cool. But first, you must pass through the talent called Ambitious Mind, where you become more susceptible to Odium's influence. You get a +2 to your cognitive defense, nice, but if you go on to bond a void spren and take a form of power, once per day when you get a complication on the plot dice, which I'm not going to explain here, go watch that video, you have to succeed on a DC 15 discipline test or you become stunned until the end of your next turn. Dang. But also, if you've sworn the first ideal of a Radiant Order, you automatically succeed on that test. Let's go Venli. And I mean, okay, the reason why I wanted to go into all this detail here is because I think it just gives a perfect example of how much care Brotherwise Games took in their development to not only make things cool and fun and balanced, but also to stick closely to the actual lore and mechanics of the world that they're building this game for. It is just perfection here, and is, I think, demonstrative of how this game so often feels like a well-crafted love letter to Sanderson's work. Speaking of, yeah, probably my favorite thing about this book and this game is the way they handle paths. Again, think classes, right? There are lots of really great non-magical, if you want, paths. that is non-radiant, non-regal paths where you don't need any storm or void light to do awesome spell-like things. These are your heroic paths, right? Again, everyone starts out on one of them. You can be an agent, an envoy, a hunter, a leader, a scholar, or a warrior. And I appreciate both that these heroic paths are mechanically viable, potent, powerful options for any character to take and stick with. I mean, see Adolin, Queen Fen, and countless others in the books for great examples of these, right? But I also appreciate how with each heroic path, they give great examples in the rulebook of like character archetypes that you might want to create by following each of these heroic paths and their corresponding specialties. Think subclasses. Each heroic path has 3 specialty trees that you can go down. They're kind of like subclasses. So for example, they'll give you an Azish constable archetype, right? Who would take the agent heroic path, and then which talents in that path and specialty would work well together for this archetype, or how to make a great listener who was a keeper of songs, following the envoy path and the mentor specifically, or a Ghostblood operative who would be a hunter with an assassin specialty, etc., etc. But I think my favorite thing about the path mechanic is the sheer versatility of it. In my experience, most TTRPGs either actively discourage you to multiclass or outright prohibit it. And you guys know me. That does not sit very well with me, generally speaking. And the Cosmere RPG, it removes all barriers to multipathing and even, I would say, encourages you to do so. Why not make a scholar/warrior/windrunner, right? Kaladin was. Don't pigeonhole me into just being one single-minded character who's only good at one thing. Every level, you get a talent, and you can just use that talent to go deeper into your chosen class or path and specialty, right? Or you can pick a different path and gain some talents there. Or heck, take a talent from a different specialty in your same path. As long as you meet any prerequisites for those talents, and these usually just come in the form of like how high your skills are, right? Rather than your attribute or ability scores, then you can truly craft your character to be exactly what you envision them to be. And I just love that so much. What I wouldn't give to be both a Shadow Monk and a Mercy Monk, right? In D&D. Also, the talents you can pick up in every single path are just, they're seriously awesome. There's no way I could spend time to go over them all. I literally spent hours and hours poring over each and every one. But some of my favorites are, as a thief specialty in the agent path, you can get a talent called Cheap Shot that lets you spend 1 focus. Again, that's a special resource that every class has access to. But yeah, Cheap Shot lets you spend a focus to take an action to make an unarmed attack, but using not your weapon skill to hit, or even your unarmed strike skill or anything, but your thievery skill. And it's pitted against the enemy's cognitive defense. And if you hit, you stun the target. So cool. I love the tagging shot talent, which comes right at the beginning of the archer specialty in the hunter path. It takes all 3 of your actions that you get on your turn. If you decided to go slow that round, again, watch that video. Do we need to turn this into a drinking game? Take a drink. But you use all 3 of your actions to first move 5 feet, moving usually takes an action by itself, and then make a ranged attack against an enemy, and if you hit them, they become your quarry, which gives you advantage on all attempts to find or attack them. It usually takes 1 minute to make someone your quarry, right? But this would let you just do it on your turn. A perfectly huntery thing to do, and frankly, a much better hunter's mark. Yeah, I said it. The Scholar Path's starting talent, their key talent, lets them, among other things, gain a skill rank in 2 different cognitive skills, right? And this can even raise their skill rank higher than the usual cap for their level. It's capped at 2 until you hit level 6, but this would even let you take it to 3. That's cool, but of course, you know me, I like to build agile strikers, and if you were to take the strategist specialty in the Scholar Path specifically, the mind and body talent there, it would let you, among other things, use that skill bump from your key talent in a physical skill as well, meaning, yes, you could put it in the light weapons skill, for example, increasing your +2 hit and damage above what even a low-level warrior path character could have. And you're a scholar. So cool. Speaking of warriors, one of their specialties is Shard Bearer, of course, and one of the talents in that specialty is Stone Stance. Yeah, you get access to most of the sword stances from the books, and they're freaking awesome. Stone Stance says that while you're in a Stone Stance, your deflect score goes up 1, meaning you take less damage if you get hit, right? But enemies have to spend 2 actions to attack any one of your allies who aren't themselves in Stone Stance, meaning that it's going to be very costly for those enemies to attack anybody other than you, and that's just such an awesome way to make a character a great tank. I thought I was going to play an agile striker for my first character, but now I'm thinking I want to be a shard bearer warrior tank instead. And you can use Stone Stance as a shard bearer specialty even if you don't have access to shards in game yet. There's no like prerequisite to own shard plate or shard blade or anything like that. I guess you've just been training with the kings or something. I don't know. So cool. Can you guys feel me just getting so excited to come up with different character builds here? It feels like such a fun playground, and I haven't even started talking about Radiant Paths yet. So let's talk about Radiant Paths. There's a lot to say here, but again, I'll focus less on the mechanics and more on what I like and what's potentially problematic about the way they implement Radiant orders and powers in the game. In general, I think they do a really great job. I love how they spend a lot of time talking about the importance of the Spren bond, talking with your GM about what kind of Radiant Spren your character hopes to attract long before the time that it comes in the game, right? And the importance of ideals and playing your character in a way that would be in line with the ideals of that particular order of Radiance. Radiant characters feel similar to, say, paladins in other RPGs in that you're swearing oaths and you gain increased power thereby, but different than Pallies in D&D, at least in that there are some serious consequences for acting in a way that goes against the ideals of the order that you're sworn to, like mechanically kind of hard-coded into the game almost. We're given guidance on setting goals that help us work towards the next ideal in our chosen order. We're given guidance on how to roleplay your Spren, who come with their own abilities in-game and personality, right? And kind of working with your GM to do that. There's even discussion about how actually speaking the words of that next ideal should come in a climactic moment in game. All of this is honestly how I think it should be if we're truly to try and emulate what becoming a Knight Radiant would feel like, right? And how growing in that order should play out. I will say that I do get a little bit nervous that it's going to be difficult to manage and coordinate and plan and track all of these things for GMs who aren't real veterans. And, you know, veterans both of GMing in other TTRPGs and veterans of the world of the Stormlight Archive. I don't fault the game developers for this, but I guess I would just caution those playing this game. If your GM is a bit newer to GMing and or the world of Roshar, I might hold off as a player trying to become a Radiant like right at level 2, you know? Fortunately, the heroic paths are really strong, like I've said, and you'd be well served to take a few levels at least in one or even more paths. There's a lot of fun and power to be had there. As tempting as it might be to just beeline down a Radiant path as quickly as possible to speak that 4th ideal and get your shard plate, well, I mean, first of all, you can't do that actually. The different ideals are wisely, I think, locked behind level requirements. The 2nd ideal requires you to be 4th level or higher, the 3rd 8th level, and the 4th ideal is 13th level or higher. Even so, I worry that it's going to take a lot of work for you and your GM to talk this all through and plan it all out and keep track of progress that you are or aren't making towards the next ideal and what's happening with your Spren and all of that stuff, right? Especially if multiple party members are wanting to become Knights Radiant. There's a bit of a risk of everyone having like main character syndrome, I think, and I can see some players getting impatient or upset because my friend spoke their 2nd ideal before I got to speak mine, etc., etc. Kind of like the Lopen. Obviously, your experience will depend a ton on your table, and some people might feel like this all flows pretty naturally and their GM handles it all like a champ, and any conflict between characters doesn't flow over into personal feelings of players. But yeah, just be cautious and patient and plan on putting in some work if you really want to become a Radiant. But yeah, putting that work in is totally worth it, of course. Brotherwise has just really nailed the Radiance from a mechanical and conceptual perspective, I think. This section of the book is probably my favorite of all of the books. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but I'm like drilling down here. This is my favorite of the favorite. If nothing else, it is a great lore and art resource for each of the orders, giving us insight into each order's philosophy, their history, advice on which heroic paths pair well with what specific order, a deep dive on the Radiant Spren specific to that order, and even giving us the first 4 ideals for every single Radiant order. Though sometimes the words aren't necessarily like specifically stated, right? They're kind of more general feelings or what the words should kind of be or sort of speak to. I definitely learned some stuff poring over this section. Oh, and as for the 5th ideal, some of you might be wondering, player characters aren't currently allowed to progress that far. Remember, again, that generally the setting for the game is after the end of Book 3, and while your campaign might push on to further along in the story, I think it makes sense that they didn't want your role-playing character to outpace some of the main characters from the books on their Radiant progress, right? As for the talents of each individual order, again, I'm not going to go over them all, but like I mentioned in that How to Play video, I think the way they've handled this is really elegant. Each order has access to 2 surges, but every order shares each of those surges with one other order, right? Generally, the talent tree for the surges are the same regardless of which order you get access to that talent tree from, right? So the Division Surge tree looks the same for Dustbringers as it does for Skybreakers, for example. But then there are some unique things to each order with the way they can specifically take advantage of both of their specific surges. So you get Windrunners who can, thanks to the fact that they uniquely have access to Adhesion and Gravitation, put a reverse lashing on a bridge to draw arrows to it, right? All of those like unique to this order things are found in the Spren Bond talent tree. For Windrunners, it's called the Honor Spren Bond talent tree or specialty. For Will Shapers, it's the Light Spren Bond specialty, etc. But yeah, beyond that, just like you'd expect, as long as you've got the Stormlight to fuel your powers, you can breathe in Stormlight, use it to increase speed and strength, or to heal, and if you're an Edge Dancer or Dustbringer, you can skate and glide around the battlefield, or if you're an Oathcaller or a Lightweaver, you can soulcast even living creatures, just like Yasna, and if you're a Windrunner or Skybreaker, you can fly, and so much more. It is awesome. As for the rest of the chapters, I'm not going to get into the items section too much here. I go into weapons and shard blades and plate and things in that how-to video, but I'll just repeat here. I really love what they do with all the weapons and armor. They feel unique, powerful, and the traits they have make them feel similar to the weapon masteries that you get in like 5.5e of D&D, as long as you train for them, right? And that's awesome. The best thing is what a good job they do of making shards work exactly like you'd want them to work in the game. For shard blades, cutting through things, potentially injuring enemies, taking 10 heartbeats to summon, all of it. And for shard plate, absorbing damage, giving you enhanced speed and strength, potentially cracking and leaking stormlight, and even having pieces explode. It's awesome. I do feel like shard plate could probably be a little bit more powerful if you're just trying to go for like mechanics of how it works in the world of the books, but I can also see that being probably a little too overpowered and then just not very balanced mechanically, and then it becomes an issue of like, well, can we even give these to players because there's such a huge discrepancy between those who have shard plate and those who don't, right? I think they strike a balance between like good mechanics and close enough to sort of the lore to make it work for the game. There are even shard hammers and shard bows and even half shards, shields, right, that can work as bashing weapons even. Captain America, so happy. I will also mention Fabrials only because I didn't have a lot of info on them yet in that first how to play video. Fabrials are sort of like the magic items of this world, right? Outside of shards, of course. And while there are a lot of cool Fabrials that you can find and or buy, like standard stuff like span reeds and pain reels, to even non-purchasable in-game like reward-only stuff like soulcasters, don't expect the scope and variety of magic items that you're gonna see in like D&D, right? Frankly, that wouldn't make a ton of sense in this world, I don't think. That said, they do have pretty cool and a fairly comprehensive and fun crafting system laid out for the aspiring artifabrians out there, with rules about all the steps needed to make a fabrial, including trapping a spren and things like you'd expect, and even potentially unique and powerful items that make sense in the world, but that we maybe haven't necessarily seen in the books yet, like a creme reel that could cause stone to turn soft as creme, or a life reel that can heal. Some of these things essentially mimic the surges of radiance, right? And I think I'm okay with that. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see stuff like this pop up in the Stormlight books, actually, especially considering how things ended in book 5. No spoilers. One of the sections of the book and the game that really feel like a pretty major departure from a lot of other TTRPGs is the section here on goals and rewards. In D&D, for example, as part of your character's creation and backstory, you're encouraged to come up with like bonds and motivations and weaknesses, sometimes maybe just rolling on a random table to help you figure out who your character is and help you roleplay them. That's great, but it's fairly underdeveloped and can honestly be largely ignored by players, and I feel pretty confident to say often is, right? That is not the case with the Cosmere RPG. There's a whole chapter of the book that is dozens of pages long devoted to the importance of creating an overarching purpose for your character, coming up with important obstacles your character faces to help them follow that purpose, and then creating a number of goals for your character that can help you towards becoming who you want your character to become. Example goals might be finding the next words to speak, or saving a particular person, or getting revenge against someone who's wronged you. There's a lot of time spent helping you as a character figure these things out. Coaching for a GM on helping and working with their players in creating these goals and working towards achieving them. And then a lot of great specific rewards that a GM can give the player for finally completing these stated goals. And these rewards can be companions, think Bridge 4 Squires, right? Fabrials, gaining the next ideal on your radiant path, shards, patrons, and titles that all come with very specific, palpable, mechanical like weight and function. And it's something I really appreciate. I worry a little that for some players and GMs, though, this is gonna feel a little squishy and kind of difficult to get a feel for, especially if you're coming from a game where character backstory and personality aren't quite so closely woven into the actual mechanics of the game. But I really like what they're trying to do here, and I feel like it will be a really cool part of the game system, especially for RPG veterans. Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm not going to get into the weeds on like resting, injuries, and how combat works. That's chapter 10 of the book. It comes fairly late in the book. But again, that's all in that other video. But I do really like the system generally. And yeah, I feel like combat here has more in combat with Pathfinder 2's 3-action economy than D&D. But there's plenty about it that's different too. Overall, I think it works well. I do still wish they'd let me break up my movement between other actions if I wanted, or maybe just decouple movement from the action economy altogether. That's probably my biggest and maybe only my real complaint about the mechanics of the combat system, but I don't think it's game breaking, and it probably makes sense logically to keep it like it is. And there are plenty of talents that you can get that will let you move and do other stuff once you unlock them, so maybe it won't be too big of an issue after you gain a few levels. I will say I do appreciate the time and dedication given to conversations in the Cosmere RPG, like social interaction, right? It gets its own chapter as well, and there's a lot of guidance given to conversation types and objectives during social interaction, how and when to make skill checks during conversations, and even using focus points to use special abilities that your character might have, depending on your talents, right? Or using focus points to resist being influenced by others in a conversation. In general, and appropriately, I think, for the very political worlds of the Cosmere, social interaction seems to be given a lot more weight here than I've seen in other RPGs, with a lot more stuff that characters can do during those social interactions, making a party face character probably a lot more important for most tables in this game, I would think. The last couple of chapters in the book are the most important, I think, here for the GM. The chapter on endeavors does a great job of putting some real specifics around parts of the game that aren't necessarily like either combat or social interaction. You could call it exploration, sure, but maybe more than that. Trying to sneak into an enemy base, is like a specific endeavor, right? Or chase down a fleeing opponent, where everyone might be contributing to accomplishing something that's more than just fight or talk. But the chapter specifically devoted to advice for game masters is pretty comprehensive for something included together with what you'd otherwise consider to be mostly a player's handbook, right? And it does a pretty good job of going over all kinds of stuff, from the importance of scheduling and running a session zero and talking about safety tools, to the mechanics of running combat, how to create encounters, how to read an NPC stat block, etc. Importantly, there are some good guidelines around navigating the complications you might run into as you run this game in a world with very set in stone canon, right? Do you try to adhere to the world as established by the books, or are you okay making Roshar a little bit more your own, with a greater ability to influence and change the world so that the outcomes of major events are a little less predetermined? You can go either way, and this should be discussed with everyone at the table before you begin your campaign, but I think the general idea they're trying to convey is this world that they've sort of shown you is a foundation for you to build on, and if you want to make the world your own, you should. Tell your story in your version of Roshar. Maybe your adventurers become powerful enough to eventually kill Odium and take over the world in your game. If that's fun for you and you need to think about this as like a what if or a multiverse version of Roshar, then I say go for it. If your story doesn't end up making it into book 6, who cares? As long as you're having fun telling stories and playing with your friends in this world, then that's what you should do. On the other hand, some players might really prefer working within the existing lore and canon, right? And maybe your character isn't going to ascend to Shardhood eventually, or like kill Dalinar. Maybe you like the idea of taking on an important but like off-screen quest that has implications for the wider world that there just wasn't time to cover in the books, right? In the end, let me, I guess, sort of summarize my feelings here. I think if you are interested in exploring a new role-playing game set in a fun and unique world, or if you really love the Cosmere and you want to play in it, you should give these books a try. Hardcore fans will love them just for the art and the lore alone, but gamers out there, I honestly think it's a well-crafted system, and these books are well put together. I like the way the information is presented. It's orderly, it's clear, and maybe above all, you can see how influenced the creators are by both Sanderson's work and their mountain of experience creating games professionally. The only people I really wouldn't recommend this game for is like those who just aren't into fairly rules-heavy game systems, and or like really just aren't fans of the Cosmere, in which case, how have you been watching this video so long? And or you just have no interest in exploring a new world and game system that's like fantasy but isn't like traditional high fantasy, right? With elves and dragons and wizards, you know? Otherwise, I wholeheartedly recommend giving it a try. I really think you'll love it. And I really know that I love you. Thank you so much for watching, for supporting the channel, for all that you guys do. I appreciate it a ton. I do. I hope that you will have a great day and a fantastic week. And if you don't, I sure hope you'll hang in there. I believe that you can overcome the crap that you're dealing with right now. So don't give up. I hope that you'll do good and be kind, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, journey before destination. Bye-bye. I was trying to think of a good song to sing that would like have a tie-in to the Cosmere, and I was coming up blank. It's not like Lord of the Rings, right? Where there's like all these like poems throughout that you can just, I don't know. What am I missing? So I thought maybe like a good like flute tune, like that Wit or Hoyd might be playing or something. I don't know. What am I missing? There's got to be some sort of pop culture song that has a good tie-in to the Cosmere, to Stormlight. Let me know in the comments. What did I miss? Well, yeah. Huge fan of all things. A long time. Somebody asked me in the comments when I like put a post on my channel to let people know that I was going to be doing this video. Somebody said, let us know your thoughts about Wind and Truth. And I thought, I don't think I'll do that in the video, but maybe in the outtakes. So here's my thoughts about Wind and Truth. Spoiler warning, I should have said, for those who haven't read the book yet, it's awesome. I'm sorry, haters, you're just wrong, okay? It's so good. I'm going to put it in my top 3 of 5. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Maybe 4. But I love it. And I know that he uses the word therapist, and that really throws some people off, like my son. Sorry, Knox. You're wrong on this one. Don't make him your editor, because then he's going to have the ability to put some kind of floating text in here. But no, I loved it. I thought the pacing was great, even though there were kind of some slower parts because of the 10-day structure. Like, it kept it feeling, for me anyways, intense. I loved all of just like the lore, like all the stuff that we got to see about, you know, the humans first arriving on Roshar, and like the formation of the Oath Pact and all that stuff just like was so cool, so fulfilling. Man. Sorry. Yeah, I loved it. There were some surprises, some things I didn't see coming. I freaking loved the ending. And just like the Empire Strikes Back feel that it kind of left me with. Yeah, I loved it all. Check this time from the drop down, but and it's pitted again, and in the this has become powerful. Oi.